Let's go ahead and open up the hosted zone here. And I'm going to adjust my pane out a little bit so we can see this better. Let's go ahead and click on Create Record Set. Now under the name, we'll put www. The type is going to be IPv4. And for alias, we want to select yes. Now under the alias target, we're going to select web1-east. And the routing policy here is going to be failover. Now once we select failover, we get a couple more options here. We get two options for the failover type, primary or secondary. We want this record to be the primary, so we'll stick with that. In the set ID field, we need to enter a unique string to identify this record. AWS populates this with www-primary, which is fine, so we'll stick with that. Now, the next two options sound very similar. Evaluate target health and associate with health check. Let's hover over Evaluate Target Health to view the tooltip. It says specify whether you want Route 53 to check the health of the alias target. The alias target must be health checked or this setting has no effect. Now here's where this gets confusing. Is the alias target being health checked? Well, what is the alias target? Let's scroll up. It's another resource record. It's not the Web1 East instance itself. Are we health checking this resource record? No. In fact, it's not even possible to health check a simple resource record, which is what this is. Again, I know this is confusing, but it does get easier the more you work with health checks. Let's scroll back down. So we'll leave Evaluate Target Health as no. For the next option, Associate with Health Check, choose yes. Scroll down here, and then we can select one of the health checks that we created. We, of course, want to select the one for Web1 East, and there we go. And that's it. We go ahead and click Create to create this first primary record. And we can see it over here. There it is in all its glory. All right, now we will repeat the process for Web2 East. I'll move through this a little quicker. We'll create a record set here. The name here is also going to be www. It's an IPv4 address. And for alias, we want to select yes. Now under the alias target, this time we want to select web2-east. The routing policy will of course be failover. And this time we want to select secondary. Scroll down a bit more here, and it names the set ID www-secondary, which is fine. Evaluate target health, we will leave as no, and associate with health check, we want to do yes, and of course the health check to associate Web2 East. Perfect. All right, this all looks good. Let's click Create. Now, let me shrink this a little bit. Now, please take a look at the alias records the failover records point to. Let's start with Web1 East. Notice that the TTL here is 60 seconds. It's important to have a low TTL because when a failover occurs, DNS servers throughout the internet will still hold on to the old record until the TTL expires. Let's go see this in action. Let me open up a new tab in Chrome here, and I'll do www.BenPiper.host. Now notice we hit Web1 East. Okay, now let's open up an SSH session with Web1 East and shut down the web server. Now here I am on Web1 East, and because the web server is running inside a Docker container, I need to stop that container, and to do that, I need to find out the container ID. So to do that, I'll do sudo docker ps, and then sudo docker stop, and then I'll go ahead and paste in the container ID here, and that stops the container. Great. Now let's jump back over to Chrome. I'm going to go ahead and reload the web page by hitting F5, and we get an error. The site can't be reached. Why hasn't Route 53 failed over to Web2 East? Well, remember the failure threshold we set in the health check settings. We set it to 2, and the health check interval is 30 seconds. That means Web1 East has to fail 2 consecutive health checks before Route 53 considers it unhealthy. That takes about a minute. In addition to that, my DNS server is still caching the old record pointing to Web1 East's IP address. So the bottom line is that we have to wait about a minute before we actually get failed over to Web 2 East. Alrighty, I've waited 1 minute, and after reloading, we now hit Web 2 East. Route 53 has failed over, which is exactly what we want and what we expect to happen. What happens though if Web 1 East comes back up? Well, let's find out. Let's jump back over to our SSH session with Web 1 East. Now I've hit my up arrow a few times to go back to the original command that I used to start the web server, and I'll go ahead and hit enter there. And once it restarts, notice that we're getting requests from the Amazon Route 53 Health Check service. If you pay attention to the timestamps, you'll notice that the health checks are coming in at anywhere from around 5 seconds to 15 seconds. All right, let's jump back over to Chrome. Again, it'll take about a minute for Route 53 to consider the instance healthy because it has to pass 2 consecutive health checks. It's been about a minute now, so I'm going to go ahead and hit F5. And just like that, we fail back to Web 1 East. Or I guess you could say we success back to Web 1 East because it's no longer failing. Regardless, this is the exact behavior we want. When the primary fails, we fail over to the secondary. When the primary comes back up, we fail back to the primary. Perfect.